Okay then, and welcome to another episode of the Ignite Your Mind podcast. Myself, Sanjay Patel. I hope you guys are doing well, and thank you for listening in. So today, again, I've got another special guest from another country, especially in the US, which is great. I seem to love my US guests at the moment in the second season of this podcast. So, yeah, I'm really pleased to have the lovely Sharon on board. How you doing, Sharon?
Hello. Wow, it's so lovely to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
No problem at all. So it's an interesting story about sort of how we know each other. So like most of my guests, actually, it seems to be these days, we met through Instagram. I think I started following
Mm.
you, and do you know what? As I said to you earlier this week, you were one of my inspirations as to why I started my podcast. Seeing you do yours, and seeing how you live your life as the nomad lifestyle, obviously pre-COVID. Yeah, it inspired me.
Pre-COVID, yes.
Pre-COVID, yeah. It inspired me, and also your mum and dad are heroes. I love seeing your videos and your mum and dad. Okay,
You know, the thing is, my parents, I feel like, are more popular on social media than
yeah.
me. So
Oh,
I always tell them,
I'm not
they're like,
surprised.
oh, yeah, I upload things of them like on TikTok, and
Yeah.
like one of the first videos of my dad, it got like 700,000 views or something like that. So it just like
Stop it.
blew up.
No
Yeah, and then
way.
it's like my first time where I'm like, oh my gosh, I did something that went viral. So it went kind of viral, and then every single time I post something of just me, it's like,
Yeah.
400
Yeah.
views. Great. I'm like, what?
What's going on here? Yeah, I mean, look, it's funny because like one of the reasons I started following you was because of, obviously, you were living that digital nomad lifestyle, which I love, and I would fully embrace myself. And I started seeing those videos and obviously the TikTok stuff, and yeah, it just seemed like it was the perfect balance. Like your parents are just here. It's just the stuff they do. Maybe it's the way you record it. I don't know. The reason and what you try. I don't know. Do you get them to do stuff, or do you just be like,
No,
do you
no.
do this? Like, do you want to get involved while I'm doing this? Like,
No, my parents, they're the cutest. And I
yeah,
just try to capture little moments and things where I'm like, oh my God, that's so funny. And for me, it's like, oh my gosh, I think my parents are so adorable. So let me
yeah,
just record this.
yeah.
And then I just like put it up and people seem to like it as well. And I think it's because like my parents are, I don't know, they're very like sweet and cute.
Yeah,
And, Asian parents being sweet and cute, I think,
100%.
people, apparently people all around the world seem to like it.
They love it. No, they love it. Well, look, anyway, we'll talk about more your parents when we get into the podcast. But if anyone's listening and they're wondering what the hell we're talking about, I will put Sharon's Instagram details all over this post. So make sure you go check it out. Okay, Sharon. So I've invited you on because you're doing cool stuff. I see what you're doing from your social media. And this podcast is all about people that are doing cool stuff, but have also be able to tell their story or their journey and the challenges they've come through. So for people that are listening, can you take us back to what it was like for Sharon growing up as a kid? Like, where were you and what kind of kid were you?
Okay, what kind of kid was
Hmm.
I? That's a funny thing. I love telling a story about my childhood because when people see me now, they don't believe what kind of child I was when I was younger.
Hmm.
So they see me now, like for example, when I was in Bali, I won the Social Butterfly Award in our digital nomad community because I'm always like chatting up with people, always
Yeah.
meeting people. But actually, I was very, very shy. And my parents always, like, even now, my parents talk about this how, like, when I was little, I used to always just hide behind, my parents or my dad, and
Hmm.
always, like, was so afraid to talk. And I remember
Interesting.
in second grade, there was this time, and I shared this on my podcast too, but there was a time where I literally peed my pants because I was so scared to tell the teacher that I need to go pee and go to
No.
the bathroom when it's like not break time yet, you
Oh
know?
no.
So I think what happened was just like I was so scared to, challenge authority.
Hmm.
I was so scared to speak up. And I felt like hearing my voice too, it was just like so scary because I was so not used to voicing my
Yeah.
opinion. Outside of my home, at least. I think my parents, they did a really good job of just nurturing a safe space within home.
Hmm.
So at home, it would be like I would be a chatterbox. I
Do
would
what you
chat
want.
it all up.
Mm.
Yeah, and my older sister, she would always say like, "Oh yeah, like since you're little, you were always chatty." But
Mm,
then that was at home. But when you take me outside, I was so scared. So growing up, I was
mm,
really, really shy kid. I was actually born in South Korea. So I grew up there until I was 7. And in second grade, I moved to California in America. So being an immigrant as well, like I didn't even know the ABCs. So trying to
yeah,
figure out a whole new language, on
yeah,
top of being like the extremely shy kid, I was just quiet that first year when I was in my new school in America. And I feel like almost people thought I was mute because I was just so quiet. And I remember
yeah.
like 6 months into my second grade class, I said this one phrase, which was, "Yay, we're going to the library." And people freaked out and they were like, "Oh my gosh, Sharon said something." And they
No.
would bring me to the teacher and be like, "Sharon, say it again, say it again." Yeah.
Oh
So
no.
yeah, so people think, like Sharon Kilon Han, I'm a podcaster, I'm a life coach, I do digital marketing, and last year I spent 6 months traveling and things like that. So they think
Mm,
like, wow, like you're so outgoing, you're so extroverted, you love talking. But
yeah.
in reality, I was just a really shy kid.
Yeah, do you know what? It's kind of interesting because I can kind of resonate with that. When I was younger, I was kind of the same. Like my mum told me a story that when I went to, she took me to the doctors to get my injections when I don't know, 3, 4, maybe. I was
Mhm.
talking basically, um, and apparently the doctor was asking me questions, and I just would not say anything. And even when he'd done the
Oh.
injections, I just didn't say anything, even though it hurt. Apparently, my
Oh
face was
my gosh.
but because I was
Oh.
so shy to say anything, or literally just wouldn't say anything. And then I remember in
Mhm.
school, I used to find like 1 or 2 friends and just be
Mhm.
sociable with them, but literally just not even speak to anyone throughout the whole
Yeah.
school, like my early days. And now look at us, like we won't shut up. Now we just
I
keep
know,
talking.
I know.
So
And
it's
the thing is like showing up like this and doing the podcast, interviewing people, and even
mm,
like giving talks, presentations, and things like that. Like last year, I had the honor of being one of the lady boss speakers in like an event we had in Bali. But like all those things still scare me, to be
yeah,
honest. So
of
it's not
course.
that things like this don't scare me anymore, but
Hmm.
I think now I've learned to say no to fear and to be like, you know what? Like, if what I'm doing is going to help someone, if someone can be encouraged by hearing my story,
Hmm.
then I'm willing to put myself out there and give it a shot. And also, like,
Yeah.
I think the more you do things where, if something scares you, instead of running away from it, if you run towards it, then you become stronger and stronger.
Yeah, there's like a higher agenda there, isn't there, for what you want to
Mm-hmm.
do and the impact you can make. Yeah, and I fully
Mm-hmm.
agree with that. All right, cool. So going through sort of the early school years, I mean, let's take the age. So going into your early teens,
Mm-hmm.
obviously you moved over to the US when you were 7. Like started to get the
Mm-hmm.
language. I'm assuming started to pick
Mm-hmm.
stuff up. Maybe started to come out of your shell. Like what were you like with teens, like the teenage years?
Yeah, in teenage years. Um, so growing up, during those times, I moved around a lot. I went to, so in America, there's, six grades in
Hmm.
terms of elementary school. So there's
Hmm.
6 years. I went to 5 different elementary schools, which means
Oh wow.
basically almost every year I moved. And then in middle school, after moving around a lot, I entered a middle school, which was like a special middle school in California where you had to take a test to get in.
Hmm.
So by the nature of it, everyone in my middle school were like top of their class in
Yeah.
elementary school. Like for example, in my elementary school, I legit was like the only person who got into this middle school from all the people who took the test.
Hmm.
So you can see how competitive this middle school was. It was middle school to high school.
Yeah.
So for everyone there, during orientation in middle school, the teacher would say like, I know you guys are used to being like the smart kid in your elementary school, but here, like everyone here is basically the top of the class in
Mhm.
elementary school, so you're not going to feel special anymore. And they would like tell us that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think in middle school and going up into my teens, it was just like I was so focused on school because
Hmm.
being Asian parents, I think since I was younger, for me it was just like, wow, like I need to get good grades, right?
Hmm.
They always say like if it's not an A, like anything below an A is like an F in our household type of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah.
even though my parents like never put that pressure on me,
Hmm.
I feel like I just kind of like put that pressure on myself
Yeah.
of just like, okay, I need to get all A's and things like this. So starting middle school, I was only looking at like, okay, I need to get all A's. And it was really stressful. And I remember, I used to not sleep because, I would just like sleep very, very little amounts because I was trying to do everything. And for me, I feel like my older sister, she's like, I think she got all the smarts genes. For me, I feel like I have to try a little bit harder for everything.
Yeah. Okay. Which
So
is not a
in
bad
terms
thing,
of,
right?
yeah, I think it like challenged me,
Mm.
and it grew me and strengthened my endurance in a
Yeah.
way,
Yeah, yeah.
where I don't look at things that are difficult and say like, okay, like I can't do this, but I look at difficult things and think about, okay, like let me just like work harder, try harder, and see what I can do and try to figure this out.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, in teenage years, in teens, I think I just like was so focused on school, academics, and to be honest, I think I was just living in this performance mentality where
Hmm.
I always felt like I needed to perform. I always needed to try hard to please people and things like this.
Hmm.
So yeah, performance mentality. But in terms of like family and things like this, I think I was a goody, didn't do anything
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah.
I tried to, I was that girl who was just like, varsity cheerleader, straight A's, you know,
Okay.
not drinking and going
Yeah.
partying kind of crazy girl. But yeah, I think I was just like very like performance mindset. I
Yeah.
was living in that performance mindset in my teen years.
Yeah. I've got a question about
Mm-hmm.
the cultural upbringing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so for you in particular, was there a lot of pressure on you, even though maybe your parents didn't put it on you? I think you mentioned, but you felt the pressure was there. Was that because of the cultural background? Like I've obviously had it as well, being from an Indian
Mm-hmm.
background. Like there is that sort of stigma around you have to do this, you have to do that a certain way, and if you do it another way, then you look, your family looks they frown upon you, they don't look down on you
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. So was that the same for you? Like what happened?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think culture has a big part of it as well.
Hmm.
In Korea, education is like the number one,
Okay.
focus that I feel like the parents have when they're raising up children.
Yeah.
And I think even like, for example, since I was younger, I think our parents challenge us to dream big. And for
Hmm.
us, we like it was just like maybe it's culture thing too, where we just always want the best.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so for example, in when I was in sixth grade or fifth grade going into sixth grade, we did like a 1 month long trip around the United States. It's like a road trip. We hopped in a car from California and we drove around the United States for a month.
Wow.
But
Okay.
a lot of the destinations were national parks, and it was national parks and universities. So we would go and we would
Okay.
visit, like when we were in Atlanta, Georgia, we went to Emory and we're like checking out this university. And then we
Mhm.
went to in Michigan, Michigan University. And then obviously in Massachusetts, we went to Harvard, MIT, and all these,
Interesting.
prestige, yeah, universities. And I
Mhm.
remember thinking since I was younger, I remember going to Harvard, and then thinking, this is the school that I'm going to go to. So,
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
since I was young, I just, I just had big dreams for myself.
Mhm.
And because I put myself into that standard, it was just like, yeah, I was always constantly trying to strive and
Mhm.
perform, trying to meet those goals that I think maybe culturally,
Yeah.
and I think it's kind of like a mix of both.
Yeah. Yeah. No, no, absolutely. I think that sounds really interesting. So you're basically your whole, it sounds like the one of the main focuses in your upbringing was
Hmm.
education related. Now, I know you follow Gary V, right? Gary
Mm-hmm.
Vaynerchuk, and obviously he's got a lot of opinions about education and the
Yeah.
education system today. So now looking back, now you're older and
Mm-hmm.
you've obviously been through
Mm-hmm.
all of that. Now looking at the education system today, do you think that that's still the right way to go for the younger generation that are coming behind
Oh,
us?
definitely not.
Mm, okay.
Definitely not. I think, man, I think there's so much broken systems in education right now.
Hmm.
Um, and something I can say this personally.
Yeah.
So growing up, in high school and things like this, I got straight A's. Did very well in school, but to be honest, I feel like I learned nothing. Um, and like all
Okay.
the
Yeah.
things that I did learn, it was literally just to get good grades on my test.
Mm,
So right after I take the test, so I would cram everything into my head right before the test, and then I would just like burp it all out
yeah.
mentally.
Yeah.
I would just like take the test, like focus in that 1 hour to get everything right or whatnot, and then right after the test, I would just forget everything
Mm,
because my mindset, I think, in terms of education was get good grades and then get into a good university,
hmm.
and that was just like my goal, get good grades, get into a good university, get a high paying job, you know so
The
in high
conventional,
school.
so
Yeah,
conventional, isn't it? And it is like an old school thing now. Like this
yeah,
millennial
yeah.
era that we're in just doesn't it does happen, but it doesn't seem to. It's starting to swing. The balance is starting to swing towards millennial ways.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really cool because I mean,
Mm,
for me, I love our generation. I have a whole podcast called Millennial Life School because
yeah.
my heart is for our generation, for our millennials. And I think it's really cool because I think millennials, we are challenging the status quo.
Hmm.
We're challenging the olden system and we're saying, like, oh, is this the best way? Like, why is this what everyone like all the things that people want to achieve? Why is it that when people get there, they're not happy?
Hmm.
And we're challenging them. We're like, okay, actually, what makes us happy,
Hmm.
but going back in terms of like education stuff, yeah, like I think it's so broken because we're getting used to this mindset of doing everything and studying and learning to do well on a test. But thing is, that's not how life works. And I
No.
had to learn it because I was so used to this performance mentality that when I
Hmm.
graduated from university, what I was thinking is like, oh my gosh, how the heck do I get an A in life? Now
Yeah.
it's like I'm entering real life. Like, what
Yeah.
does that even mean?
Who's going to mark my grades that I've got an A? Like, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. Like
So right.
it's like, and for me, I'm like, okay, what does it mean to get an A? And then when you look on social media, you could look at people who are like same age as you, who are millionaires on, something blew up on the internet or something, and they're
Hmm.
millionaires, and then you can look at that and be like, oh, is that an A? Or you can look at someone who's like married with kid and happily married, and you're like, is that an A? Like,
Yeah.
what's an A in life? And there is no A, like, there is no grading system in
No.
life. And so in that process, like especially in your early 20s, I think that's when you're trying to figure out what what it means for
Hmm.
you, what that, I guess, quote unquote A means in your
Yeah.
life. And it's so different for everyone in terms of like, what does it mean for you to be happy? Like, what is your standard anyways?
Mm.
Like in school there is a grading system, and it's the same thing. Like, what's your grading system? And oftentimes I think we weren't ever challenged
Hmm.
in our teens to think about those things. So when you all of a sudden you're 22, you just graduated from college, and you're just thrown into the real world to figure
Yeah.
it out, that's
Like,
when I think
whoa.
people, yeah,
Hmm.
people are like, whoa, like I like, what is this? What's the meaning of life? And we
Whole
start
different.
asking ourselves all these deeper questions. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think like education, I really think it shouldn't be about getting good grades. It
Hmm.
shouldn't be just about GPA. I really think it should be about like learning for the sake of enjoying learning. And
Mm.
now, like, I love learning, but
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not learning to get good grades or something like that. But I'm actually learning because it's like enjoyable, and I'm
Enjoy it.
learning about things that, yeah, that I'm interested in.
100%. Yeah, such a valid point. Like, I never really looked at it like that. Like, what is it like? How do you get an A in life? Like, you just like you know, it's just that transition. So going back to like when you left the education system, did you have a
Mhm.
plan? What did you do?
Yeah, so right after I left university, so at that time, I graduated with a bachelor's in science and administration,
Hmm.
and I did a triple. So I did finance, marketing, and organizational behavior. And I guess like this also kind of goes to show how much of like a performer I was, where I'm like,
Yeah.
I can't do just one. I have to do three, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
um,
Definitely get a
so
big picture of what you were like growing up.
yeah, I'm like that super like, oh my gosh, like I
Mm.
gotta achieve that kind of girl.
Yeah.
Um, so I graduated with a triple in finance, marketing, and organizational behavior. And in that time, my senior year, I was trying to figure out, okay, like, do I want to focus on finance? Because if I want to do that, then there's like data analysis type of jobs, and financial, in the financial sector.
Hmm.
And I had a little bit of experience because I interned at a consulting firm in Korea when I was studying abroad there. And then but I was like, okay, I don't think I'm much of a Excel data. Let me
Yeah.
just do this all day type of girl.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, maybe organizational behavior, which is more HR. But I was like, oh, I don't know, HR, is this what I really want to do? And so I was just confused because I had a lot of different options.
Yeah.
But I realized, okay, you know what? I feel like from all the classes that I took, I really enjoyed taking my digital marketing class and just classes on marketing. And I
Hmm.
feel like with marketing and especially the advertising world, it's like so creative. You can get so creative in
Yeah.
advertising and things like this.
Yeah.
So I was learning about all these like ad campaigns and how to go viral on the internet these days and like all these different things. And I was like, okay, I feel like going more of a creative route would be good.
Hmm.
So after graduating, I took a couple months at home just to rest because I'm like, this is probably the only time that I'll be home
Yeah.
like this for a long time after graduating. So I spent some time at home, and then I moved straight to LA because LA, Hollywood, media, all that stuff. So I'm
Yeah.
like, I want to be part of that,
Hmm.
and I feel like, and at being a really young, you can say naive,
Hmm.
very like hope filled recent grad.
How
I was
old were
like,
you when you moved
what?
there?
21, 22,
Okay.
22.
Yeah.
Yeah. Being at that age, I was like, wow, like I want to change the world, and the only way to do that is get into like LA, Hollywood, because Hollywood and media industry is, I feel like, what's
Massive. Yeah.
impacting culture in the masses.
Hmm.
So I really wanted to be part of the media world. So I moved to LA, and then I got my first job in a media company. It's a pretty big media company in America.
Hmm.
Um, but then I got the job without knowing exactly what I was getting myself into.
Okay.
So I knew it was a media company, and my job was something, my team was in TV media. So I'm like, oh my gosh, like this has to do with television, and I'm working with all these TV stations and ad agencies. Like this is gonna be so fun,
Hmm.
and I'm gonna be creative, and I'll be able to like put something into the media world that creates change.
Something.
And
Yeah.
then, yeah, and then like the first day of work, I realized that's not what my job entailed. So I
Uh,
was I was very disappointed.
mhm.
But same time, I think one thing that I do want to say to all college students is, your first job will probably suck. And
And your
and
second,
that's okay.
and your third,
Yeah.
maybe, and your fourth. Yeah. No, you're right.
Yeah, and I think that's totally fine because it's all process of learning,
100%.
and with
100%.
everything you just grow closer and closer to what you want to do.
Yeah, no, do you know what? That's so true. I mean, I'm 34 now, and I've been through I suppose I didn't really know what I wanted to do until I turned 30. 30 was my magical moment,
Mhm.
or pre to
Wow.
30. That was when
What happened?
I don't know, I just kind of like went into a trance. And when I was like 29 and a half, let's say, like 6 months prior, and
Mhm.
I was like, I'm turning 30 in 6 months. Like, what am I doing? I started asking myself loads of
Mm.
questions like, what am I doing? What do I
Yeah.
want to do? Where am I now? And how do I
Mm.
get there? What are the steps I
Mm.
need to take? I just really started like self-analyzing, like
Yeah.
every day. And then I started listening to like podcasts, not podcasts, like YouTube videos of
Mhm.
like motivational videos and business videos, and how to build a business and how to do this and do that, how to find your purpose and all these stuff. And
Mhm.
it was just a life-changing like moment. And I've just been on a mad journey for the last 4 years behind it,
Yeah.
which is cool. And I'm thankful to that Sanjay who was 30 years old who made those decisions then.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
just going back to what you were saying, like when you come out of college and you come out of education,
Mhm.
it's gonna take time. Like
Yeah.
you have to go through the motions, the process. Like you said, you have to go through that, and then you find
Mhm.
what you want. And it does take time. Um, okay, cool. Whilst you were going through all of that, like moving to LA, like going through being the number one student, getting all these amazing grades and doing all sorts of education, did you at any point go through anything mental health related or be surrounded by anyone that was mentally like mental health illnesses or mental health related? And yeah, and you and yourself, did you ever question anything?
I think one thing, and this is something that I did mention about how I was a really shy kid.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think for me, in terms of like depression or things like that, I, I didn't have to go through that kind of season. I think growing up, I was pretty joyful child, but I think one thing that I did struggle massively with is with fear, and
Mm-hmm.
this kind of relates to why I was so shy too. I think, but everything, I think I was just very paranoid as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of fear, and I used to get these like fear attacks. And I don't even know if that's like the right way to put it.
No, it makes
Um,
sense though. It makes complete
yeah,
sense.
but it's like I could imagine when people explain what anxiety attacks are like. I feel like it wasn't exactly an anxiety attack, but it was just like a fear attack where I
Mm-hmm.
was just filled with so much fear, where like my body, I just felt like I couldn't function,
Mm-hmm.
and I would just freeze up. And it would be like really short moments, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where I would be thinking about something for a very, very long time. And I think since I was younger, like my mind was always just like thinking and thinking and thinking. And I
Yeah.
remember even as a kid, because I was thinking so much, I didn't know if any other kids, like other 7 years old, were thinking all these
Yeah.
stuff. So I would ask other people, like, hey, what do you think about? And people are like, I don't know, like ice cream, or
Yeah.
like something very like simple. And then there
Yeah.
I was at like 7 thinking about life and death, and like what happens when I
Crazy.
die. And then like, and for me, I'm Christian, so I believe in God and I believe in heaven. But I'm like, so what happens in heaven? And then like, all these like deep thoughts. It's
Yeah.
kind of funny for me to think about. If I look at like a 7-year old now, I'm like, oh my God, you're so little. And when I
Yeah.
think back about when I was 7 years old, and I remember all the things that I was thinking about at that age, I'm like, oh, actually, like you're not that little. Like
Yeah.
everyone still has like a good functioning brain at that time. But there would be times where I'd be like lost in my thoughts, and I would just get wrapped up in just like what ifs, and like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh, that's gonna be so scary, and all these like things where I would just like freeze up. And I felt like there would be moments where I would just be sucked in to fear, kind of like black hole, where everything, like my reality just seemed really far, and my
Yeah.
fear was like right in my face. And in those moments, I remember I would just like jump up and down, and I would start hitting my head because I just wanted those thoughts out of my head. And I would just go to my parents and just be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so scared! I'm so scared!" And just jumping, kicking, and hitting my head. And I would have those moments, and like those freak out moments. And obviously, it would freak my parents out, and they're like trying to pray for me,
Mm-hmm.
trying to calm me down, trying to hold me, and things like that. But yeah, I like looking back, remember those moments. I'm like, wow, like I don't think that was so normal for little kids
Yeah.
to experience that kind of stuff. Um, but yeah, I think that's like my, those moments where I had, and yeah, but nothing like where I feel like immediately in terms of like something in terms of anxiety. I think
Hmm.
maybe fear and anxiety is kind of linked together.
Yeah. Yeah. I would have thought so.
But yeah,
I mean, it's really interesting. You had it at that age, and it was that impactful, and
yeah,
the fact you remember it so vividly as well, like being 7 years
yeah.
old and having those fear attacks, we call them. Do you know what fear stands for?
What do you mean? Like no. Uh huh.
False evidence appearing real.
Oh, oh yeah, I've heard that.
Have you
Yes.
heard that? Yeah, like,
uh
I've literally, that's stuck in my head forever now. So every time I think about being scared of
Yeah.
something, I was like, oh no, no, it's false evidence appearing real. Anyway, yeah, no, I think that's a really interesting thing to happen, because like a lot of people that are kids, you don't really know what's happening. You don't know about life, do you? You're a sponge. You learn
Yeah,
off
they
what's
think
around you.
that, but yeah. But I remember, I can vividly remember all the things that I was thinking about. And
Mm,
even like, and my parents think I'm lying, but even like, I remember things from my childhood and I would tell them, like, oh yeah, I remember like when we were living in that house and like when dad carried me out of the car, I was so sad because of this and this and this. And
yeah.
they're like, Sharon, you're like 3 or maybe even like two and a
How
half.
do
Like,
you
how do you
remember
remember
this?
that?
Like,
Yeah, and I'm like, and they're like, do you remember probably because we told you about the story? I'm like, no, like I
no,
distinctly remember what I was thinking and what I
yeah,
was feeling at that time. So
madness.
it's quite interesting.
Madness, madness. All right, and then
Yeah.
so going into your more recent years, like
Mhm.
how did you get into coaching and like this journey, I suppose we call it, this personal development journey? Like
Yeah.
what happened? What was the transition like?
Yeah, a lot of different things. And one thing I do want to say is my journey was pretty messy. It's not like
Mm,
point A to point B, just straight line.
yeah,
But I think, this is good because no one's life is A to B straight line.
no.
Um, so what happened was, so after graduating from university, I moved to Los Angeles and I was living in LA, working in my media company. And, it's like a little over two years I was working there.
Hmm.
And, I was progressing up, getting a promotion, getting, a title, account executive or whatnot. And then I was just working. But then like I think there was this one moment where when I started as an assistant, bottom of the ladder, and doing things where it was just like very tedious and boring and things like this. And I was
Hmm.
thinking, okay, once I become an account executive, then my job will be a little bit more interesting because I'll get more authority, we'll get the credit card, the company card,
Yeah.
whatnot, and I'll have, I wouldn't be so micromanaged. I
Hmm.
hated being micromanaged.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, once I become an account executive, I'll have my own clients and, I'll get more freedom. So I worked hard, and then a year into my job, I became account executive. And then it was like, okay, now that I'm account executive, I'll probably do some interesting stuff and I'll like my job a little bit more. And then like that didn't really happen. And I think around that time, I started to get really just like dull. And that's the only way that I can explain it. Just dull. Like
Mm,
nothing was so exciting.
yeah.
Um, I felt like I was turning into a robot, like an
Yeah.
office drone. And I think that's the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
Where I wasn't doing anything that was really stimulating my mind.
Hmm.
So the only like way to relieve that was during my whole 9 to 5. I would just listen to podcasts every single day because I was in my cubicle just sitting and like doing my job, answering emails or whatever. But it was just like repetitive work
Hmm.
and nothing was stimulating. So I would listen to podcasts and or audiobooks, audibles,
Yeah.
and listen to books just to get my mind stimulated
Hmm.
because I just felt like, oh my gosh, I'm so bored.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I was just so bored and just like, yeah, I don't know. I just felt like I was wasting time. at work, to be honest.
It's a horrible, horrible feeling. I've had that all too many times. I know
Yeah.
it so well.
Yeah, and then like, and work started to get, things like started to get annoying because I'm like, oh, like, do I really like have to do this?
Yeah,
Like everything
yeah.
felt really tedious. So yeah, I remember just going through those days, and I would just wake up, go to work, and then come back, and it was just really dull. And
Yeah.
I started to feel like I'm getting dumber and dumber just because I felt like I wasn't using my brains.
Yeah.
And I just, and I feel like after you do that, it's like later you realize like, oh my gosh, like it's already been a year.
So what the hell
What
am I
the
doing?
heck? Yeah, and then like
Yeah.
a year after, like a year or two after, I realized like, how have I grown as a person in this time? Because I
Mm,
remember like in college, I was journaling almost every single day, and I was growing so much, and I was interacting with all these different people and
mhm,
relationships, and all these new revelations, new thoughts, and I just felt like I was constantly growing as a person. It was really exciting.
mm.
And then like I moved, and I came to LA with this big dream of mine to be like, you know what? Like, I'm gonna change the world. I'm gonna be a positive light in the media industry. And then I find myself in a cubicle where I'm just like doing things
Whoa.
where I'm not doing anything creative. I'm not putting
Yeah.
anything out there. And I know like the things in terms of my own strength, I feel like I'm not utilizing any of my strengths.
Mm,
So I just started to get really, really frustrated and miserable. And every single time, and like I mentioned before, like growing up, I feel like I was a really joyful child. Like I would
mm,
always, I had a lot of joy in me. And I think this is, something that is unique of mine, where I feel like it's like a gift from God. Like He placed a lot of joy in my heart, and I'm really grateful for that.
yeah.
But then like at that time, I just felt like I like for the first time, like, oh my gosh, like why am I so not joyful? Like it
Yeah. Got nothing. Yeah.
was, yeah, it was just like, I mean, in terms of weekends, like that I was happy,
Hmm.
and actually every single moment, the happiest time of my day was my commute. And it's, people in LA might think I'm crazy, but I didn't have a crazy commute from like the suburbs into the city because I lived in the city.
Yeah.
I just had like, my work was about 4 miles away from where I lived, so it
Hmm.
was a nice little local road commute with palm trees and LA great weather.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like the happiest times of my day was my commute, my car
Okay.
ride. I love just driving, looking at the blue sky, the palm trees, and things like this. And then like at work, I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is like I'm
No,
miserable,
I'm here. I'm
yeah,
back here again.
yeah. And I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, if my commute to work is the most joyful moment of my day, I think something is wrong,
Yeah.
especially if I'm spending so much time at work, right? And like
Yeah.
a person, like you spend so much time at work, and if you are
It's
miserable,
crazy. Yeah.
all those, yeah, if you're miserable 40 hours a week, like,
You got to change something. So when
yeah,
was the penny dropped? When you knew, like
yeah,
you like I'm done. I'm done with this. But then you knew what you want to do. When was that penny drop moment?
yeah, I think that probably happened. Well, actually, if you say penny drop moment, um, like the moment I made the decision, everything happened very quickly.
Hmm.
But I think there was a build up. So back before I quit my job last year.
Yeah.
Um, so last year, March, I quit my job, 2019. But starting from 2018, around August, was when
Hmm.
I started really thinking about this.
Hmm.
And I remember there was a time when, and I think everything kind of, the momentum built up from then. So around August, or yeah, like August of 2018, I remember there was this one Wednesday night I was at like a church prayer night, and I remember just like crying because I just felt
Hmm.
really stuck. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who can relate, where you just feel stuck
Yeah.
and you don't know what you want to do. And for me, I felt stuck because I didn't like where I was. And I hated the fact that I was turning into a person was complaining all the time. And for me, I didn't,
Mm.
like people knew me as someone who's like always positive and joyful.
Mm-hmm.
But then now, like every single time people ask me, Sharon, like, how are you? Like, oh my gosh, like my job, like I hate this. And I was just complaining. And I didn't like that I was becoming a person that was complaining.
Mm-hmm.
But then I didn't know how to leave my job because I didn't know what to leave to.
Yeah,
Because
yeah. That's the
if
biggest problem for everyone that hates their job,
yeah,
right?
yeah, because it's like I'm working in this place. I built some experience as an account executive in the media industry, doing what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then like it seems like the only plausible job are within the same thing, within within the same industry and same field of work in a different company.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like, well, yeah, if I go get a job here and they're paying me a little bit more, but then essentially I feel like I'm still going to be miserable. And do I really want to
Yeah.
get stuck in another job? Because, like, you don't want to move around so much. So it's like, I was thinking if I get a new job, I'll probably have to stay there for at least a year or so.
Yeah.
Do I really want another miserable job at a different place for that
Yeah,
long?
there was a
Right?
saying I used to have. I was like, when I felt like that, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll
Mhm.
just go get another job. Maybe it pays a little bit better. And I was like, well, no, I'm moving from one shit job to another shit job, and it's just like it's still going to be the
Yeah.
same. I'm still going to feel the same, right? I might have
Yeah.
a little bit more money, but I'll probably end up spending that on rubbish anyway. Like,
Yeah.
it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, so I was kind of in that boat and I felt miserable. So that Wednesday night at church, I was just crying.
Mm,
And I remember that night, I reconnected with a friend, old friend of mine that I knew from Boston. And then I was just telling him, and maybe he was like, "Hey Sharon, like, how are you?" Because maybe he saw that I was crying and was like, wanted to
mm,
check in on me. But he was just like, "Hey Sharon, like, how are you?" And I told him about my job and how I feel stuck and how, I don't know what to do. It just, I told him I just feel lost.
yeah.
And he was like, I just started career coaching.
Mm.
Do you, do you feel like that's something that might be helpful for you? And I remember just looking at him like, oh my gosh, like I need that. I need
Yeah.
that,
Need it now.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so I started meeting with him and he started coaching me out, and I feel like at that point, that's when things started to feel better. And he shared with me his story of like struggling to find the job, the right
Hmm.
career, and all these different things. And he was older than me, and he said like at 29, that's when he finally found something that he really likes. But
Yeah.
up until that time, in that 20s, like it was just so difficult, feeling like a failure, feeling unsuccessful, feeling like you're getting older and older and you're just like, you're not where you want to be and things like this.
Yeah.
So it helped me a lot talking with him. And then through organizing, I guess, what my goals are in terms of like breaking it down in terms of what my life goals are, what my work goals are, what my strengths are, and how do I want to align things together, and how do I see that all coming together. And then I came up with 5 different potential job offers, or not job offers, but job opportunities,
Okay. Yeah.
like potentially 5 different jobs. And the top number one job that I put up there was digital marketing. And I was like, you
Hmm.
know what? Because I was in the traditional marketing, traditional media, where I was working with TV stations. But
Hmm.
I thought, you know what? Maybe digital marketing would be something interesting. And so from that moment, I started talking with a guy who's a digital marketer, and he's an entrepreneur. And through talking with the career coach too, we talked about how I have like an entrepreneurial spirit where
Hmm.
I hate when people are putting me in a box,
Yeah.
kind of like in a cubicle, and they're telling me these are your job tasks, and that's
Yeah.
all you can do. And you can't do anything else like that.
I
I
mean,
hate that.
just
Mhm.
just on that, like, do they? I mean, I haven't worked for a company that does that kind of thing in a very long
Mhm.
time. Does that
Mhm.
still happen? Like, do people still work in cubicles and like enjoy it?
Well, my company, I was working in a cubicle, and I didn't enjoy it.
It's like what you
Some
see in the
people
movies,
do.
isn't it? Like the people that go into these offices and they've got little cubicles everywhere. Like, I couldn't
Yeah.
think of anything
So,
worse,
I mean,
personally.
yeah, I mean, we're a media company, but like
Mm,
in terms of what I was doing, I was like a media sales rep.
Yeah.
So within media, I think, I don't know, it was just like not very glamorous. The office was pretty, but in
Yeah.
terms of like, yeah, it was just like I felt like it nothing, like nothing against the company,
Hmm.
and don't get me wrong, and I think the company is great, and the employees and the people I met there were so many people, so many great people I met, but it just wasn't for me. And I think that's something that people need to figure out in terms of what works for you and things like this. But for me,
Hmm.
I think just where I was, and given my characteristics and my personality and my unique strengths, it just felt like I just felt like a fish thrown into sand.
Yeah.
It just wasn't my water. It wasn't my field.
Mm.
Um, so after figuring that out, I started talking with a digital marketer and entrepreneur. And because I was like, oh, wow, I'm interested in entrepreneurship. And I studied a little bit of entrepreneurship in college as well. And I
Hmm.
thought it was fascinating. And for me, I always had a goal of like starting my own company, like in my 30s, later down the line type of stuff. But I didn't think it would happen this fast.
Hmm.
Um, but I was talking with the guy, entrepreneur, digital marketer, and he became like a coach for me as well,
Amazing.
where we were hopping on calls every week, and he was giving me a lot of personal development stuff, like, Sharon, you should read this book. Sharon, you should listen to this podcast. Oh, look into this, and then like, oh, like, do this questionnaire, it like personal growth questionnaire.
Hmm.
It helped me, it changed my life, and I started doing all those things, reading books, and I think that build up happened,
Yeah.
where it got me to a point where I started my first like side hustle while working 9 to 5. And that was all because I was working with a coach.
Mm.
We're talking with a guy who is a digital marketer, entrepreneur, who was coaching me. And he said, like, Sharon, like, use your 9 to 5 to pay the bills and your 5 to 9 to live out your dreams.
Yeah.
So he started to change my mindset, and he was getting me from an employee mindset to an entrepreneur mindset.
Hmm.
So during that time, with a lot of thanks to a lot of people around me, and I started to meet more entrepreneurs and people who are entrepreneurial and things like this. And at the time, I was also dating a guy who was a successful entrepreneur, and so I think everything kind of rubbed off on me, where I started my first like e-commerce business just like as a side hustle while working my full time. And then in the process of just testing it out, and this is something that I tell like my coaching clients as well,
Hmm.
like don't be scared to test things out on a
Yeah.
safe level. Like,
Absolutely.
don't, if you hate your job, don't just quit right away and
No.
then like go do something. Like, test it out like while you're doing it, like where you're playing it safe, and responsible, being a responsible adult. But you're still like testing things out and talking to different people. And so I was also like hopping on a lot of calls with different professionals and asking them what their job's like, just to get a feel of if I would like that job or not.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, and after testing out like the e-commerce, running my own like online business type of thing, it was just like I was hooked. Like,
Yeah.
it, yeah, it just like put a joy and spark into my soul,
Yeah.
where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so fun. And I'm like looking at all these like YouTube videos, buying courses and learning all these different things online, because it was just like so
So
fun.
much. So
And then
much.
like, yeah, and I was finally like learning because I enjoy learning, not just learning to get A on my test,
Yeah.
and it was stimulating. And then that's when I realized, like, man, I think I just want to give this a shot, like
Mhm.
full time, just a shot for 3 months. So I told myself, let me just do this for 3 months. I feel like I also like needed a break from corporate world and things like that.
Mhm.
So I told people in January that I think I want to quit my job and go to Bali and just live there for 3 months and
See
just
ya.
yeah. Yeah,
Love
because I
that.
had a friend who also did something like that, and I was talking with her and just making things work and looking at my finances, seeing if I have enough savings, like if I'm doing things, you want to do things in a responsible way.
Mm.
And somehow like timing and everything just kind of aligned, where, yeah, I was able to do that. And so I finally pulled the trigger. I gave him my 2 weeks notice in like February of 2019.
Hmm.
And then my last day of work was March 7th or something like that, March
Yeah.
7th. And then I was in Bali March 9th. So 2 days after I was in Bali.
Yeah, done. See you later. I mean, that's
Hmm.
like this. You've made some very very valid points. I'm not going to go over all of them because it's quite a lot, but there's a couple of them. One of them is don't quit your day job and do your side
Hmm.
hustle on the side. It's one video I made. It was like there's 24 hours in the day. You still
Hmm.
need to pay your bills, and if you don't, if you,
Yeah.
you know, I always said to myself, oh, I'm just going to quit my job and then start something else. I never did, and I'm thankful I didn't do that because if I did
Hmm.
do that, then you put more pressure under yourself to try and build something, and you start working from the
Yeah.
wrong place, don't you? You start thinking, I need
Hmm.
money, so I'm going to start doing this for money rather than because I love it. um
Yeah.
it's a very difficult transition, but it's a very important transition to stay in your job until you're ready. And another thing you
Hmm.
said was test,
Hmm.
test. We hear it a lot at the moment because of COVID, but not that kind of test. Test
Hmm.
out, test what you want to do, right? Such a valid point, so important. Because
Hmm.
like, I mean, I started an e-commerce business when I was back 4 years ago. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't for me, but I'm glad I did it
Hmm.
because I wouldn't have known otherwise. I wouldn't have
Hmm.
known. I didn't really sell anything. It was I kind of set it up, but I gave it a go, and I was like, okay, this
Yeah.
isn't for me, but that's good. I like that I gave it a go because now I know, and
Hmm.
then you kind of slip into what you actually find. So I mean, look, talking now, current day, if you looked into the future of Sharon's life, what is
Hmm.
Sharon's mission?
My mission in terms of like the big picture
Just
life
life, just
vision.
like what is your mission in life?
Hmm. I think for me, man, there's so many different things that I can say. And I know this because, I'm sure as a life coach and as a life coach as well, like I always talk about this about life vision. And there's there's different, I think, areas of like what I can say. But I think ultimately, deep down, what I want to do in terms of my purpose, I would say, is to be able to love on people and to show love to people and to share love to people and to be able to point that love to God. Because for me, faith and my beliefs and I think as a Christian, like it's something that is very important for me. And being able to love people, love God, share God's love is, I think, my ultimate life, I guess, big mission in life.
Mission, yeah, love that.
um and then in terms of like, if I have like one specific goal that I want to focus on a daily day, it's like I would be happy at the end of my life if I can say something like, wow, because I got to live another day, because I got to live every single day that I did, if there's one person whose life was a little bit brighter, whose life was a little bit happier, whose life was a little bit better, who felt a little bit more loved because I lived another day on earth, I would be so happy.
No, I love that. I love that. And do you know what? That's probably one of the most
Mm,
rewarding and satisfying things you can do as well. Above all,
mm,
above everything, money included. Like, so I fully
mm-hmm,
agree with that. I love that. Um, all right, Sharon, look, we're gonna close it down here, but amazing conversation. There were so many nuggets in here of value. So
mm-hmm.
if you're still listening to this, thank you very much. If you've seen value in it or you know someone who could see value in it, please do share it with them. Spreading the message of Sharon's joy and love and happiness is what it's all about. And definitely go follow Sharon because you just look at her Instagram and you'll just smile. You'll just be happy. It's good
Oh.
vibe. It's a good vibe, right? I put on my Instagram the other day. It's positive
Mm.
vibes only. It's the only way we roll. It's the only way we roll. We wouldn't want to roll any other way. So yeah,
Mhm.
no. But look, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Another US client in the back. Woohoo! Love that. So if I come to Chicago, I'll hit you up. I'll say
Yeah.
hello. I mean, I'm not allowed to go to the US at the moment anyway, but
Yeah.
whenever we do,
Post-COVID days.
yeah. Or I'll meet you in Bali because that's what we did speak about. So that's
Yes.
always an option as well. Any final words, Sharon?
Yeah, I guess just for everyone who's listening, I know that right now with COVID and everything, it's been tough season. And I think with this, you can feel lonely, you can feel anxious, there could be a lot of fear, or even like your health might be not at a place where, it's not where you want it to be. But wherever you are, I think um, just know that like we're all like going through this together, like every single human being on earth. And just like me and Sanjay, we met on social media, but like being able to talk like this in person, it makes me realize like, wow, no, like every single human being, like we all have a story, we're all going through some stuff. So know that you're not alone, and that you're surrounded by so many people who are there just wanting to also be known, also be heard. So I think if a whole bunch of people acknowledge that together, then this world would be a much less lonelier place and much more loving, community filled type of place. So know that you're not alone, know that your life has meaning and worth, and just keep on doing you.
I love that. I love that. What a way to close. Jesus. I don't think I've ever heard that. That's amazing. Okay, look, Sharon, that was amazing. Thank you so much. And yeah, I suppose I'll see you on the other side.
Yeah, no, it was a pleasure and honor. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. Thanks very much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Ignite Your Mind podcast. This is a safe place for real talk on discovering powerful stories, talking about mental health, real business journeys, and hearing inspiring stories. Please do subscribe if you are listening to this on Spotify, YouTube, or Apple Podcasts, and leave me a comment. And more importantly, share this with anyone who you think may take value from it. I look forward to seeing you next week.